Welcome, adventurers, to another episode of the Traveler Chronicles, where me, Dungeon Master Eguile, go over little scenes of our campaign.
Absolutely.
I'm always, as always, joined here with my co-host, D&D wife,
welcome,
my wife,
everybody.
and fellow player, one of my players.
Yep.
Me. But once again, this is always where we come together and share little scenes, snippets of our campaign, because we know it's a little ridiculous. We know people probably don't want to listen to the whole thing.
Right, that's
so
ours.
we try to pick the best parts and the most exciting or the most sad and share them with everyone and kind of give them a little bit of a deep dive.
Absolutely.
But we also get a nice little opportunity to get a ground floor view of Extraeus itself with our on the ground reporter Luna, voiced by D&D wife.
Yep.
Oh, if I could talk a little bit today. But today is a pretty exciting one, as we have been kind of talking about the Traveler's arrival to Arnknoka.
Yeah.
And the last one obviously was a little bit more dry, kind of learning more about the social status and didn't quite have much action for the players. It was more for me.
Yeah. There's a lot of walking around for us.
Right. But there is a big difference, because this one was really when it started to kick off. And the real big kind of instance of this is that, to me, this was the true sign of what I was saying, is that the players had gotten off the choo-choo train.
Yeah.
In that now they had direct freedom. It was really kind of those moments of the DM where you've done all the juxtaposition, you've done all that, and you go, okay, what do you all want to do?
Go.
Right. And so this is a really, critical point in a lot of, tabletop games, Dungeons and Dragons, in that first kind of moment. And now for us, we had new players.
Yeah.
Right. And so new players are always, it's that dreaded moment of when you kind of start playing D&D and you get to the moment of, you can do anything.
Yeah.
And when you're told you can do anything, your brain says do nothing.
A little bit sometimes.
Right. And so you stumble and you're kind of like, well, wait, I can do anything. Well, then what do I
don't
do?
want to do anything.
And so this was that first moment where it was kind of this open air. It was, okay, you're here. This is where you're going to be.
Yeah.
So you could just go kind of walk around the campground. And so I think this was so important to me, because this was kind of also to see kind of how, especially my new players, would react to freedom. Because one of my previous new players, they kind of struggled a little bit with that at first. And
tough.
so we've kind of learned and kind of, tailored from our mistakes to kind of better help new players kind of integrate, and our buddy system tends to work. And I think that's the big thing of this scene, is it really shows kind of how the buddy system can both bring some clarity to the new person and then bring kind of crazy effects to the old veteran, which is really cool. And so today what we're really going to be looking at is we're going to be looking at the scene of the introduction of Mr. Peepers. Now this was something where it was kind of funny, and it's a scene where the players who aren't connected to that particular arc or plot line or quest, as you would call it, stumble upon it accidentally and then get kind of pulled into something more than they ever would have, while also inadvertently finding that there was only really one player who could actually see these creatures.
Yeah, that was
and it just happened to be that one player was the first to discover this creature. Much to, obviously, my happiness as a dungeon master. But as always, we kind of look at, and we're going to look at kind of the instance of that, and then we're obviously going to touch base with Luna a bit. And then we're going to actually really kind of get into the deep dive of what exactly happened and how we can see the freedom and how that changes for a new player as well as a veteran.
Oh, yeah. Because it's really tough. Like, you don't think about it. And we clearly didn't think about it when we split the party either.
Right. And I think that's the big thing, right? Because this was really that first point. This was the first split the party.
Yeah.
Now, I get a lot of pseudo grief for this from my players, in the fact that I am very allowing, but I also take it as an opportunity to punish the crap out of you guys.
Well, it's like we're we take a little bit of a risk by going off on our own sometimes, and we have to acknowledge that sometimes that can happen.
Yeah, and for me, I like to encourage it. Now, I know there's a lot of DMs that it's like the bane of their existence. It's kind of a hard thing to navigate, and honestly, it's not I don't think it's a skill that everyone can necessarily do. I have one of those weird computer brains that can just like pause a scene, move to the next one, pause a scene, move to the next one. But for me, I enjoy it because to me, it puts players into more realistic situations. Because, I mean, what adventuring party kind of sat next? I mean, look at Lord of the Rings. They didn't stay shoulder to shoulder the entirety of the walk.
No,
they weren't back to Mordor, right?
Yeah.
They went on little treks. They get lost. They go on little misadventures.
They each get separated in their own
And so
ways.
that to me is the principal nature of a D&D campaign. And so the other side of it too is also to see, okay, who are going to be my more inquisitive, exploring kind of characters? Who are the characters who would rather just sit at camp and kind of wait for the scene to change or something to happen to them? And who are the ones that want to run out and go do stuff?
Yeah, exactly.
And then the other thing too for me is, now this is a special situation for, I think, my table, is that I have 6 players.
Yeah.
It's sometimes easier for me to put them in situations where there's less of them than all of them. Because obviously if it's something where it's like, okay, everybody roll, that's 6 rolls right off the bat.
Oh, so many.
And so also it's like, if a big fight has to come out, right? If there's 6 of you and it's like, it's 2 highway bandits trying to get 2
against 6,
it's not going to do anything, right? But now if it's 2 and there's only 2 of you that happen to, it might be a little bit more harrowing. And I think that really showed in the scene that we are going to look at, because there was also so much more going on in the background too. Because the other facet that I loved about this scene is that this was another sign of also what happens when players aren't really sharing. They're trying to hide, be mysterious,
or just don't think about sharing it sometimes,
right? And so like in this case, Bricky was under a certain condition that made him essentially get more damage than he would have normally. So, but because he's not sharing this information, it ends up making it more humorous, because I mean, he wouldn't have known. There was no way for him to know that the particular damage that this creature did was what he was weakened to.
Yeah.
But because he didn't share any of that, no one was taking it safe. It wasn't like an extra level of safety. And like, I find that sometimes, especially when it comes to new players, that they will play overly safe, because they've been told so many ghost stories about the dreaded TPK and characters being one-shotted and all that. Does happen.
It does happen.
But if you're trying to play a long-running campaign, especially at level 1, I don't think necessarily your DM's out to just kill you.
At least let's hope.
Yeah, I mean, we've had it happen in our first campaign, but we kind of rewinded
it was
that.
An accident.
But it is that kind of thing. Now, I mean, obviously, you as a player, it's an even more harrowing experience than me as a DM.
And I wasn't even the one that went off in this little scenario, because I stayed by the cart where it was safe.
You were one of those.
With Tobias, we were prepping food and it was perfect. It was great. We had a nice little chat and it was nice. And then this happened.
Right.
I didn't get the brunt of that split of the party, but we saw what the effects were afterwards, and kind of being privy to that and not having gone through it ourselves was kind of a little worse, because it's like, we weren't there. We couldn't have helped. We were here having fun instead. We should have been there. So it really gave us this like, maybe we don't want to split up all the time,
Yeah, and then I think too, like, obviously, like you said, right, it's you're seeing it. And that there's sometimes where, like, as a DM too, where I'm like, okay, if we split enough, maybe I'll separate you guys.
Yeah.
And, I kind of had that planned for later on in our campaign, because I also like doing it if you do separate, move them into a different room, make them stand outside for a few moments, because then they truly don't know what happened.
Yeah, it's
because there is that other little side of, the old dreaded, you're not there. You're not there. You're not there.
I am the worst, sort of violator of that rule.
Right. And then it becomes, like what I usually like to do is like, okay, they get back. Would you like to tell everyone exactly what happened? Yes. Okay, you all know what just happened.
Yeah, right.
So it makes it kind of easier, because obviously metagaming is always going to be there. It's not something that just goes away.
Yeah, but we have to, find ways to balance it and have fun with it too.
Right. So obviously we want to look into more, but first, a little tap on to our reporter on the ground, Luna.
Yes.
Let's see, Luna, you there?
Hello?
Maybe they're not quite ready yet, so we'll just I guess we'll just jump into
we'll keep going.
the scene. So like I was saying, this scene really centers around kind of our 2 little agents of chaos in the early part of the scene. We had 2 groups of little chaos machines. It was V and Drexla, and it was Bog Bean and Bricky. One was more innocent, and the other was more
not so innocent.
Pirates.
Yeah.
But This was kind of a real fun time because it also was, I think, kind of also the first experience of kind of my like mentorship program kind of kicking in. System. In that, I think, with Bricky kind of encouraging Bog Bean to go out, really kind of had them just kind of separate from the party.
Yeah.
And since obviously the player of Bog Bean has kind of the comfort of knowing, okay, well,
I'm with someone who knows what they're doing.
He's not going to let me get killed. Like, obviously, he knows what he's doing. Yeah. He probably goes. And that really starts that off because it's like, okay, they're comfortable. They can move on. They can go to venture out. And so while they're doing that, they're out in this outer ring, like we were talking about in the last episode.
It's a little less populated.
Right. It's more of like this campground with pup tents and everything else. And so at that point, they're just kind of meandering through. They're not really looking for anything in particular. They're just kind of making their way, seeing what's around. But that's when they kind of stumble upon the tabaxis. Now, because of this, and they learn later, it's like mostly, women and children and all this kind of thing. And it's this kind of weird, like, here's this tournament of like, bring your strongest and bring your most powerful. And here, like, there's kind of their weakest.
These
they're
very live
smallest.
Cat folk, and,
as they, as always, they get encouraged and they want to go look things out. And as they kind of investigate, they find all these young, kittens, tabaxi children. Yeah. And it's just, it makes this funny scene because you have Bog Bean who, for all purposes, looks like a child, has only been around for a few years at this point.
Yeah.
So when she interacts with children, it's like this, it's this crazy creature, but she's funny and she talks like us.
And it almost feels like another child.
Right. And then you have Bricky, this like almost 6 foot, mechanical man who doesn't have the best expressions.
And at that point, he looks like a monstrosity.
Right. He hasn't been upgraded or anything.
And he stinks.
And it's just interesting because this is also where our knee-jerk rule kicked in. So while they're playing and the kids are having fun, they're passing a ball around. And so the player goes, well, I throw the ball back.
Yeah.
So I take it as, you throw the ball back. So make a strength check, So it's this, now it's putting some stank on it.
You're going to spike that.
Right.
That
so it's,
and
it is that thing where it's like, okay, toss, throw, but it was like, so it's like, it leaves for those funny things of like, watch your wording. But of course, because of that, this poor little kid isn't going to catch this ball and just takes it to the gut. No, we're not talking like the kid in like a movie gets floored 40 feet off it and shoes are still on the ground.
Right, no.
This isn't Matilda. But it's still kind of like taken as a violent reaction. And that's what's really interesting because during that point, Bog Bean has been catching like the sight of this like kind of thing off in the distance, like in the shadows.
Yeah.
Every time she tries to point it out, nobody sees it. No. So it's just, it's hiding. It keeps, whatever this thing is, it's hiding.
It's like
it could
a weird
be a kid.
creature. Yeah.
But this is the first where she sees this thing come out, and it's this kind of, I really reckon it to like the Saba men from Dragon Ball Z. They're kind of these like small creatures, and their hands are claws. They have these kind of gaping mouths, but rather than being green, they're more kind of brown skin, and they have these large, like bright yellow eyes.
Ooh, okay.
That are like these, hence Mr. Peepers.
Yeah.
And so she's kind of watching this thing kind of analyze the scene, and then she just watches it dart like a bat out of hell and just takes a swing. Like even I thought, I'm just rolling an innocent swing. Yeah. It wasn't much. But then
do a D4 of damage.
It was more than that. But the fact that at that point Bricky was vulnerable to necrotic.
Oh no.
And this thing did necrotic damage. So when I told him and he goes, "Oh, well, it gets doubled, I'm down."
Yeah.
And so here we are in the thing that I don't want to have happening. And the person who's with him is a new player.
Yeah.
And of course, this is my returning player, Eric, who decided to put the extra caveat of difficulty of being this pseudo undead creature that doesn't heal through normal means.
Yeah, so healing does nothing.
You have a new player who wants to help, but mechanically and roleplay wise, there literally is nothing.
He can't, yeah.
And so it's this interesting scene of just this tall creature, just for the sake of everyone around him, just suddenly starts bleeding from the ankles and drops dead.
And nobody sees who attacks him.
So it's that funny scene because I remember the player of Bog Bean kind of looking around to the other players in a sense of like, help.
I don't know what to do.
But they are realizing I can't say anything because they're not with me.
We can't.
So it becomes, okay, what do I do? So her first thought is just grab the body and run.
Yeah. Get back to our friends.
As she puts the body over her shoulder, she just starts hightailing it.
No, I'm pretty sure she dragged him by the leg.
Well, no, she threw him on like an over fisherman's carry. His legs were dragging.
Okay.
So, because that was the whole point where like his fluid was dragged behind him.
Oh, no.
Because I remember being like, if that gets lit, that could be a problem.
Oh, yeah.
But we hadn't explored that yet.
Yep.
So it was funny because that left a little trail because as he was being drugged. So, and that's what's really kind of this interesting dynamic. It was really kind of a new player. And I think this was like session 3.
Yeah.
Right. And so all of this goes down in an instant. And for a brief moment, myself and Eric are kind of going, oh crap, did I just kill my character?
Yeah.
And so it really, really stuck with me because it really was that testament, right? And so here the scene kind of, obviously all of my players are watching this go down.
Yeah.
So it's not like they're like, oh my God, what happened?
Yeah.
But the scene of Bog Bean just dragging desperately, not knowing what to do, of this like lifeless, what was already a kind of lifeless body anyway.
Yeah, a little bit.
To the campground, dropping him down. And then it was, the players knew, so vocalizing her character still kind of being a struggle. So it fit even more with the story. She's like, I don't really know what to say because I didn't really know what happened.
Yeah.
And it just played into where the characters really, everybody at the table got into it because then it's like you would someone in trauma. You're like, okay, what happened? We just need
Use your words.
And you guys are going, we just need you to say certain phrases and then we can jump in.
Can help.
But we need you to, just like you would like a person suffering trauma, you're like, who hurt what? You just need to tell me what happened. Speak, child.
But she was hysterical. She was like, I don't know what happened.
And so I think that makes it really great. And to me, it was like that whole thing where,
super organic.
For me, it was great because it was the whole dreaded, like, this is what happens when you split the party. Somebody almost dies.
Consequences.
But it was also cool because, obviously unbeknownst to Bog Bean, like this creature is not visible to everything.
She's the only one that could see it.
So then it becomes even more of the boy who cried wolf famous scenario of that she is trying to explain this crazy creature that no one else reacted to.
And at least she has the sort of downed Bricky as a pseudo proof, but it's still like, well, what did the damage?
Yeah, and I liked it too because at first it made it seem like, especially to you veterans, you hear, oh, okay, now I think it was, it started as like 13 damage. So then it got to be 26 and you're like level 1.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's
crazy.
everything.
And it was funny because I think I looked at a few of you veterans and all you guys were going, oh, he's playing this one. Like,
this isn't.
Even though
your starter
I didn't
D&D campaign.
really know because his character has that unique,
that was
mechanic.
an unexpected side effect.
I didn't know. And so it was one of those things where it really hit, I think, to the players.
Yeah.
It really hit to the newbies.
Yep.
It really hit to the veterans. And then, hell, it even really hit the DM.
Yeah.
And I think that was really post that whole drop and that whole event. I think even then moving forward, it wasn't necessarily a sense of, oh God, we can't move. It was a lot of more of like, okay, there's dangers, but we need to find out about it first.
Yeah, we
it
need
wasn't
to figure
just,
it out.
okay, we're gonna huddle up in the cart, we're gonna wait for them to come find us, and then maybe we'll fight. No, you guys were like, okay, we need to learn more.
Yeah,
we need to find out what
research.
this was. What did you see? Why did nobody else react? And also, what the heck is Bricky and how do we actually help him?
Right. And I think it's so funny, the name Mr. Peepers too, because you didn't come up with that name.
Nope.
Bog Bean came up with that name because it was the only way she could describe this thing.
Right. And it's the way that the player organically named something and it's now essentially
iconic.
The assigned name of that
it
creature.
It really is. They are a Mr. Peepers now.
Right. And that's what, and I think honestly it even creates even more scariness as these creatures, which are tied into Tobias's storyline, as these are manifestations of dreams.
Yeah.
So these are mostly like an imaginary friend gone
nightmare.
hellish.
Yeah.
Right. And so their biggest thing is that they would then consume the eyes of the children
and subsume their bodies.
And in turn, remember, they then turn into Mr. Peepers.
Yeah.
So a child once after a while will then become one itself. And what's great as we discover later, which we'll touch on later, as the players discover this fact, realizing that every time they kill a Mr. Peepers, they're essentially killing a child.
Yeah, well,
because you know how much as a DM
but...
I have as to horribly scar you guys when it comes to children.
Oh yeah, children have been a source of nightmare and sadness.
Children's in RPGs are just the best little cannon fodder you can. You can't do it in movies or television because it's on the screen.
Right,
Nobody wants to see that. But in our imagination,
everything
I feel
goes.
like in the theater of mind. Nobody's safe.
Oh yeah. It can get pretty hairy in there.
It makes me sound like a fairly morbid DM. But
I
really,
think that's what makes the stories really fun and interesting.
I think honestly, it's these scenes that are, I think, the proven example of why I wanted to do Traveler Chronicles. And that idea of like how much of D&D revolves around your favorite scenes, not your whole session. Like it's you can't.
There are some downtimes that you're just
can't remember the 8 hours of your whole session, right? Like I even have you guys write journals, and that's still as a helper for yourselves. But really, it's about the scenes, and this shows. I mean, this was early in our campaign, and we still talk about it.
Oh yeah, it's a huge
it's
moment.
Still important, and it set almost the entire precedent to what became a very, very dangerous enemy for a long time, and still now in the campaign.
And it's set how we deal with them from now on too.
Right. Well, I think I'm hearing a little something.
We're getting a transmission.
Looks like they might have connected. We'll have to figure out what's going on. Luna, what's going on?
Well, welcome to a special report of Traveler Tidings. This is Luna coming at you with breaking news here at Arnknoka, where one of our party members, Bricky, has just been downed. Bog Bean.
Help, Luna's Toby. Somebody help him, please.
Yes, but please tell us what happened first. How did this happen?
There's the Peepers, and he got hurt, and he threw the ball, and now I carried him all the way here. You gotta help him, somebody.
Wait. You have to slow down. What is Mr. Peepers, the ball? Who threw what?
We were walking, and we saw the tabaxi, and they were just playing, and then she had a friend, but he had big yellow eyes, and I swear I seen him before, but no one cared. No one cared that Bricky got hurt.
Well, if someone attacked Bricky, wouldn't an alarm have been raised? Why did no one run to the rescue?
I told him, and no one believed me. So I had to come find my friends, because, I don't know, do you believe me?
Well, could no one see this? You said a brown creature with yellow eyes?
Yellow eyes, and he was friends with the tabaxi girl, and he has these claws, and he hurt Bricky because he hurt the girl, and it wasn't his fault.
So the tabaxi girl, she could see it, and you could see it, but nobody else could see it.
Yeah, you're right.
Well, why didn't the little girl sort of back you up and let everyone know?
I don't know if they believe her neither.
Oh, I see. Well, this is a sort of emergency here. Is there anything we can do to help him?
I don't know. I can stitch him up, but I don't think it's going to stop the bleeding. He's bleeding a whole lot.
Oh my, I can see a plethora of wounds on his pale body, besides the normal scars that appear on the skin that we know Bricky has. I also see some slash wounds on his leg oozing a terrible-looking black sort of caustic liquid. Oh God, it smells atrocious. Oh dear.
There's a trail now through the whole city because I had to travel so far now to be back here.
Oh no.
I don't know how long he has left.
That can't be good. Well, I mean, he's pale already. No offense, but it looks like he's gone. But we clearly see he's not gone. We need to get Tobias. Is there anything he can do?
I never brought a dead person back to life.
You do your best. You do your best to patch him up. I am going to go get Tobias. This is Luna signing off of Traveler Tidings for an emergency. Please join us next time when I perhaps have more on this. Thank you. Oh my, that was a distressing scene to see. Joining me now here is the player for Bog Bean, EntLynk. EntLynk, thank you for joining us today on Traveler Tidings. As you can see, the report was extremely hard to watch. For those of you at home, please avert your eyes if you do not want to see this. But EntLynk, can you give us a little bit of perspective on how you felt during this moment, especially after having split the party so early on?
Oh, it was frantic.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't even especially as a new player, I wasn't gonna sit at my notes to try and find what I could do. I wanted to act. I wanted this
absolutely.
this like horrible attack to be over as quickly as possible, knowing that this character isn't healed by normal means, right? So I don't know, like I could have stitched him up maybe there, but who knows if I would have had time at the end of it. So I just decided to pick him up over, he's just huge hulking character, and I just have to like hoist him over my shoulders and drag him back to
and
Bog
at his
Bean's
height
friends.
he's only about halfway up your shoulders,
so
and the rest of his half of his body is on the ground.
I don't know at the time, but like I would think that hopefully the DM wouldn't be so terrible to add like bludgeoning damage to me dragging him across town.
I think at that point he's fairly beat up already.
He's suffered enough, right?
Yes. But also, you know, as a new player, that must have been extremely jarring to be one of your very first encounters. How did that feel in the moment, and how did you sort of get through that as a player?
Yeah, I mean, as kind of previously discussed, it was all hunky-dory before, and I felt safe with like kind of a veteran player, and you know, what could go wrong?
Right.
But
that dreaded question.
Yeah, but like it was a really cool thing that like no one really knew that was going to happen. Totally steered it in a different direction, and it was crazy. And even my mistakes in the moment were a good learning experience because I was even like praised for some of it because it was wacky and it was silly and it just kind of played to the character
and I think you did your best in a sort of very frantic situation, as you pointed out. It's extremely difficult to keep a cool head during this sort of crazy scenario, and
especially like even early on, like we still of course care about our characters, so like absolutely. To think that like my inaction could inadvertently cause a character death, like that sucks. I don't want that.
That's true. I didn't even think about the guilt that you could possibly feel as a player, you know, not just as Bog Bean but as EntLynk yourselves. Like I could have done something to save that person.
It was definitely like very emotionally real. Like, you know, this thing may as well have been happening in real life because like we're scrounging for a solution.
Oh yes. And you know, it was such an emotionally poignant moment. As a new player and as a new player at this table, how did that sort of leap in emotion contribute to the bonds within the party, obviously especially with Bricky?
Oh yeah, like I think that it not just with Bricky, but also like she knew immediately to go find Tobias and Luna,
your friends,
even Drexla, knowing that she has like the
technology.
Mechanical stuff, like even though like she can't really yet, but like these are the only people that she knows she can trust
she has
and help.
Yeah.
But with Bricky as well, like I think this scene was like directly after him running from fire and us realizing that he's scared of fire, and we walked right back into town to kind of decompress, and things are heightened right back again. So we are going through these kind of like just had an emotional talk, and then now we're kind of like on death's door,
right onto it.
The loop-de-loop was crazy.
So there's really no sort of downtime, so to speak.
No breaks.
Right. Oh, well, that must have been a little terrifying,
but fun still. I love it.
Always contributes to the wonderfulness of the campaign overall. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, EntLynk. I really appreciated you giving me a perspective on that little piece of craziness that we just saw.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for joining us for Traveler Tidings. This is Luna signing off now that it is a little bit more calm. Thank you.
Well, sounds like a lot's going on down there.
Yikes, yeah. A lot of trouble brewing.
Well, you know, Extraeus is quite a dangerous place, and you know, I definitely want to make sure they know it.
Oh yeah.
But obviously, my last little point too is why obviously this is important is also too. This represents, I think, my first homebrew creature too.
Yeah, completely
and so
yours.
It was really kind of nice to, you know, when you introduce something, and to me it was really great because it kind of reminded me of like traditional television where it's like, okay, you find this enemy. It's like Power Rangers, right? Like there's this creature they fight, and it's like, oh my God, they're so strong. We can barely beat them. We hold them back. And then it's like, okay, cool. And then it's, oh, there's more than one of them.
Oh.
And then they go later on in the story and they discover, oh, they're the grunt. They're the smallest, weakest thing in the hierarchy.
Oh, great.
And I think I love to really already start that because, like I said, my biggest qualm with a lot of things is like wolves, goblins, you know, little things like that.
They're tough.
Kobolds.
Yeah.
It's more of just, they're just fear in numbers. They don't really have that intimidation. Sure, you can play them that way, but everybody fights those creatures.
Yeah.
Mr. Peepers?
They're brand new.
It's a whole different game. And the fact that they have yet to actually discover how they can see these things.
Yeah.
And it won't be for a while that they really do.
It took us a long time to figure it out.
So I really liked this because it really set up the kind of theme of this campaign, and that anything can happen.
Yeah.
And that, but also that through exploration, you're also going to get more of the story. You're going to find the plot threads you might have missed the first time around. So just going and walking around, going to kind of get peace,
could start an adventure.
might find you some chaos and a little bit of adventure. And honestly, isn't that the whole point of D&D?
Absolutely. That's what we're here for.
It's not a tavern drinking simulator.
Right.
It is a adventure game.
Yeah.
And you can't start the adventure unless you go out and do it. But as always, thank you once again for everyone out there that listens, and please remember to like and subscribe to our podcast to any of the podcast platforms that you listen to.
Absolutely. We love all of your support. We also encourage you guys to join our A Couple of Nerds Discord community, where we talk about all of the things that we cover on the podcast, as well as some of our fun personal things.
Oh, yeah. And if you have any questions for any of the travelers, want to get more of their perspective on any of these scenes, or kind of maybe ask what they really thought,
do a little bit of your own investigative reporting.
Hit them up there. That's where you'll find them playing games or just streaming and doing various oddballs. And if you're looking to get any more of the Traveler's Chronicle or Tidings, you can go to our YouTube at Couple of Nerds Productions. There you can find the actual videos, get to see a little bit more in depth of the behind the scenes, as well as a more visual representation of Extraeus.
Yeah, sometimes you get a little bit of the artwork too, so that's always fun.
But once again, thank you as always, D&D Wife, for joining me here on this adventure. And as always, adventurers out there, let's hope your game goes as smooth as ours, which we as always know is not very smooth.
Yep. Have a good night.